Welcome back to Just Jocelyn, and this is part 2 of the voter integrity in New Hampshire. And as I promised, we were going to come back and give you some more solid examples of what we're talking about. It's up to us. It's our civic duty, each one of us. You know, and I know you hear the grassroots word, and I cringe, and I need to come up with a better word. But we need to be taking care of our business, we the people. We have 39 enumerated rights in the state of New Hampshire. Those are God-given rights, and no one can take them away from you. The state of New Hampshire Constitution protects those. And the Constitution of the United States makes sure it's an extra layer of protection. So this is where we're coming from. This is where all of us need to be solidly in our foundation and not willy-nilly running around with these, as Donna showed us, this RSA book of statutes and rules and laws that are election laws, but not necessarily totally in sync with the Constitution.
Correct.
Okay.
So this book, granted it's a smaller format, but this is, with the index, it's 300 and over 400 pages. Okay.
Written by attorneys.
Written by attorneys, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Written by legislators and, you know, who are taking all of these different aspects of a very convoluted system, it seems, according to all of these laws.
And making it so everybody is equal and it doesn't matter what the Constitution says. Everybody's entitled to vote.
Well,
and everybody can vote.
This, and this must happen, and, you know, this time frame and this application process, and they have, you know, nickel and dimed this all the way down to the total minutia. A mutual friend of ours, Daniel Richard,
yes,
and one of our state representatives, Nikki McCarter, worked together to simplify the election laws.
That book.
This book, yes.
Would they get it down to 150 pages?
I've been told they got it down to 16 pages.
Totally in sync with the New Hampshire Constitution, I would assume.
Correct. As they say, keep it simple, stupid, or as a friend of mine,
keep it simple, silly.
Keep it simple, sweetie is the nice way to say it.
Correct.
Without calling people stupid. And I tend to prefer simplicity.
Well, it seems to me there's an awful lot of opinion. And like noses, everybody's got one. And we need to keep our noses out of other people's business. The only business of voting and we the people is the Constitution and our 39 enumerated rights. Not all this excess verbosity and I think and I wish and I want. That the Constitution's not about thinking and wishing.
Right. Right. And the Constitution originally said that only inhabitants of the state of New Hampshire were entitled to a voting right. Okay. And at some point along the way, I forget if it was 72 or when, that word inhabitant was changed in the statute to resident.
Yes. Which has a whole different meaning.
Right.
Words matter.
An inhabitant is someone who dwelleth and hath his home within the state of New Hampshire.
Correct.
A resident can be any transient who's temporarily
summer
living
home,
here.
winter home, college student.
Correct. Yep.
Traveling nurse.
Traveling
Not
nurse.
picking on you nurses, just an example.
Anyone who is in the state. So the way it was originally set up was that you had to show up on election day in your home state and vote in person. No exceptions.
Correct.
Okay. So then it became, okay, 1942, World War II, we've got a lot of soldiers stationed abroad. Let's pass absentee voting so that they can fill out a ballot because they're very much
Americans
and
have earned the right to.
And they've earned the right to vote for their representatives and their public servants.
Who sent them to war.
Right. So absentee voting was enacted so that people overseas could vote in a similar manner.
Thank you. I was just going to get you on that.
To the
in
people
a secure area in front of an official, which usually was their CO.
Exactly. So when you are going to a polling place in the state of New Hampshire, you go to the ballot clerk, you announce yourself, your address, you provide a photo ID.
Which you can't leave in your wallet. You have to take out and present to them and they touch it.
They have to verify that you are who you say you are. And you, generally speaking, have already pre-registered.
Correct, because you're already on the list.
You're already on the checklist, which is what's in front of the ballot clerk. If you're not on the checklist and you want to vote same day, you come over and you visit me.
Supervisor.
And you present proof that you were born in the United States, you have a photo ID, and you have proof of residency in our town. Okay? If you don't have a couple of those things, great. One of us might recognize you. Ask. You know, we are allowed to vouch for people and say, oh yeah, that's John Doe. He just moved into town. I sold him the house, you know, whatever. And it is on my oath of office that I am conducting
Vouching
business
for him.
Exactly. So when you get your ballot, you enter a secured area behind a rail.
Off behind a rail. There's no running back and forth. You don't get to leave it with your ballot unless you're putting it into the machine or into the ballot box for hand counting.
Exactly. Yep. So you must prove who you are, enter a secure area. You're given a booth of some sort for privacy so that your actual votes are known only to you. And then you take your ballot over to normally a moderator or the town clerk or one of the selectmen or over by the ballot box. Okay. And then you're allowed to leave the secure area and go on your merry way.
Correct.
An absentee voter says ahead of time, okay, I want to vote when I'm stationed over in Saudi Arabia or wherever, you know? So the original intent of the absentee ballot law was that they would duplicate the in-person process as closely as possible with a remote voter.
Correct.
So they would get the same ballot. They would have to appear before someone who is able to take an oath and notarize the documents.
Correct.
It's an affidavit.
Correct.
You must attest and swear under pains and penalties of perjury.
That person that signed it is the person standing in front of you.
Exactly.
An affidavit. Try and take this piece of paper into any court that has not been notarized by a notary or a JP or a town clerk. You will be thrown out on your ear. A ballot is a legal document. It's an affidavit, and it's not being treated as such. And I'm appalled. I'm appalled.
And I didn't even know about this until Daniel and you and others started researching into the history of what's been happening.
Daniel went back into the archives. He went so far back.
Exactly. He's been looking at original documents. He was pulling out old printouts that were still from dot matrix printers with the little tabs on the side that go through the rollers and the sprockets. I mean, he was digging through all of this. So prior to 1979, absentee ballots had the inner ballot, an envelope, which is called an affidavit envelope.
Correct.
And an outer ballot for mailing it back to your town. An outer envelope, excuse me. And on that affidavit ballot, there was a spot for a notary.
Correct.
To sign and seal that they witnessed you
sign that ballot.
Sign that ballot and fill out the ballot and then sign the envelope. and you presented ID and you had to prove who you were before that thing was sent back to your hometown
Correct.
in the US. So when it gets back, you're supposed to verify
Correct.
that the affidavit
The moderator
is real.
is to verify.
The moderator is to verify that this is
that there's an affidavit, that there's a certificate on it. And if there
Yes.
isn't, you're not to open the envelope.
exactly, and that statute is still on the books.
Yet that's not happening.
Yet they changed the printout of the envelope in, I think it was 1979.
Correct.
When they added a religious exemption as an excuse for voting absentee. Now,
Correct.
I don't know about you, but I don't know of any religious holidays that fall on a Tuesday, in November
Correct.
or in March. I don't know. So in an attempt to make it fairer for more people to vote absentee, they modified the envelope. They took off the notary.
So that's missing.
Yes, they no longer have a line for the notary to sign.
And where was that voted on? Where was the Constitution amended to do that? Oh, that's right. It wasn't.
It was modified by statute.
Which is corporate law.
So, ever since then, there's been you've been self-certifying
Your signature.
your signature and your ballot.
So let me do what Jocelyn always does that annoys people. Let me paint you a picture. And it's actually true. So, and since COVID, there's now 7 different reasons that you can ask for an absentee ballot. Again, not amended in the Constitution, not voted on by us.
No, that was a law passed by the legislature and Governor Sununu during COVID,
Correct.
which allowed for additional exemptions such as I can't get off of work, my
kids are
babysitter
sick.
didn't show up.
The dog ate my homework.
Well, kind of.
That was a Jocelyn.
That was a Jocelyn. So I'm afraid of getting COVID, and to top it all off, us hardy New Englanders apparently can't go out in snowstorms anymore because if there's a National Weather Service alert, you're allowed to run to town hall the day before the snowstorm and get a ballot.
So picture this. So you take your absentee ballot home or it's mailed to you, and you fill it out in your basement. Better yet, in the bathroom or the bedroom.
You lock the door because you don't want your spouse to see who you're voting for.
You fill it out, you fold it, you sign it. Nobody, that is no longer an affidavit. It's not an affidavit envelope. It's not even an affidavit if you do this to it. Your signature is not certified, therefore it is not an affidavit, it is not certified. But yet, these absentee ballots are being sent in, they're being counted. The moderators are not able to certify it, but yet they're putting them through the machines, they're counting them. There's no affidavit.
Right. And there was a challenge, a lawsuit challenging an affidavit, absentee ballot where I believe the woman was blind. And
I think that was Manchester.
yeah, it was in New Hampshire. It was a lawsuit. And the ruling in the lawsuit basically said that moderators are not handwriting experts. They cannot look at a piece of paper and validate whether or not that is the person's signature. And there was a little discrepancy and a question about it. So basically what they were saying that without the notary or the JP signing off on the signature being authentically yours, the moderator can't verify it after the fact. So now what? We have absolutely no proof these people are who they say they are when they're sending in these absentee ballots.
So how is that a fair and equal election?
Well, you're basically creating 2 separate classes of voters, one held to a higher standard of accountability than the other.
Correct.
And then you open the floodgates with more excuses for absentee ballots, and our percentage went from single digits,
Right. I think it was 3 or 4%.
3 or 4%
to 30,
absentee-
32 or something?
32%.
32%.
During COVID.
Yep.
Yep.
And it's continued.
Right.
Okay. Well, we're not going to beat that one to death, but it's important, everybody. Very important, as you can tell. So let's move on. So we have the absentee ballots. People say, well, you can just go take care of this. You can go complain to someone. Well, that's called redress of grievance. That usually goes to the general court. Well, what's the general court? The general court is your legislative branch. That's all the representatives you voted in. Well, we've tried that. Daniel's tried that. It's fallen out of favor. You can no longer go there and do that. So we've been stymied on that. So let's fast forward again. 2019 in Exeter.
Okay.
There's an election. The Attorney General, Formel, sends a cease and desist to the town officials of Exeter. Why? Well, there was 2,795 ballots cast. But there was only 2,685 voters checked off on the list. That's a difference of 110 ballots. Some people say, well, that's not a lot. It is when there's only 2,685 people voting in this town. 110 is a large discrepancy.
That is very large. And I know from my work in my town, we have to do the election history input as part of the wrap-up after each election. So we have to go through and manually scan the barcodes for every single voter who took a ballot from the ballot clerk. So the ballot clerk is supposed to strike through the person's name. And in the case of a primary, they have to write which ballot they took.
Right.
And any absentee ballots that come in that are opened, that are processed, have to first make a stop at the ballot clerk table.
Correct.
And be checked off on the checklist.
Correct.
So if Exeter was following proper procedure,
they should have matched.
Exactly.
But they didn't.
They didn't reconcile.
Nope. Or if they did, they're lousy at math. So they get a cease and desist. Don't ever do this again. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So let's fast forward to September 13th, 2022. Wyndham.
Yep.
Again. This
Go
is,
figure.
There's a excellent video, I'll have to get it to everybody, with Tom Murray and Ken Eyring. Again, same guys from the original with Marilyn, but now it's just these guys. So Wyndham, 3,724 ballots announced for 2,765 voters. 900, almost 1,000, 959 more votes than voters. Almost 1,000. And remember, Exeter was about 100.
Right.
Let's do some more numbers.
Okay.
4,116 election day ballots cast. In total, 372 more ballots than voters announced. 372. What was Exeter? 110, and they got a cease and desist? They go to the worksheet of the moderator.
Okay.
2,768 ballots cast. 1,348 more than ballots sealed in the boxes, cast. So we're looking at three sets of figures. And now you're all going, what are you talking about? You're talking about the same thing in three sets of numbers. Nothing reconciling.
So, I mean, if these ballots were dollar bills and the towns were banks, people would be livid.
Because the banks have to account for every penny every day.
Exactly.
And in an election, they're not having to account for every penny. Wait, it gets better. Chain of custody. Right. Election day ballots sent to the town of Wyndham by the AG, Secretary of State.
Right.
4,970.
Okay.
Brand new ballots. They sent them from the
blank
state,
ballots,
blank
printed,
ballots,
right,
ready to go.
Right. That's our supply chain.
Guess how many ballots were sealed in the boxes when they took them out of the machines and sealed them in the boxes at the end of the day? 6,303. 1,333 more ballots in the boxes than were sent by the state.
I'm sorry, are these pieces of paper rabbits and they're multiplying in the box somehow?
I'm thinking there's some little hanky-panky going on.
So even if you still have full faith in the election system and, everything's okay, I don't need to, who are these conspiracy theorists talking? Look at the numbers and start asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
How does this happen? Why does this happen? Is it a machine problem? Is it just simply like multiplying certain
math problem? Is there not enough eyes on it? Do you need some help?
Wouldn't you want to get to the bottom of this?
I would.
Because if you are voting for a certain candidate and you are hoping that candidate wins and you have all of these other squirrely ballots for another candidate coming in, wouldn't you want to know why?
Wouldn't you want to make sure? Well, Tom and Ken filed a complaint. The AG sent a letter back, basically whitewashing all the issues in the numbers. CYA. No cease and desist letter sent, but Exeter got one. 110.
Don't
and we're
do that
talking
again. Yeah.
We're talking 1,333, 1,348, 372, 959. These are all numbers throughout the election that don't match.
Right. And I'm not an accountant, but my parents both worked in the banking business. And my mother worked as a bookkeeping supervisor. Mm-hmm. And she taught me very early on that if you have a discrepancy in your numbers and it's divisible by the number 9, you've transposed digits somehow.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you have one count that says 18 and another count that says 81, subtract, divide the difference by 9, and you'll always get an even number.
Wow.
That's an old bookkeeping trick. None of those discrepancies off the top of my head, and I'm not a human calculator.
Right.
None of those seem like just a simple transposition of digits.
And I don't have all the details. I'm just highlighting from the video. And when the show goes out, I'll put in the description. I'll make sure that we have the link for that for you. But the point is, the number discrepancies, when you look at Exeter and then you look at Windham, well, there's a lot more voters in Windham. That's not the point. The point is that there's huge discrepancies and none of these were reconciled. If you've got this many ballots and this many voters, this is how many should end up in the box, period.
Yep.
Period.
And the machines don't have to match to the second on the clock, like you said.
Correct.
But at least be on the same day when you initialize the machine and zero it.
And I happen to know there was a number of unlawful recounts that happened through the night behind closed doors without the public there, without any eyes. And it's supposed to be fully transparent. We're supposed to be able to see everything. So it's just over and over and over again. And I just encourage everybody. You don't have to be a jerk. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be nasty. But you need to ask questions. You need to pay attention to a right that is given to you by the Constitution. Follow the Constitution. Do the right thing. It's not about what's convenient. It's not about what makes you feel good. It's not about, well, Sally told me. It's not. It's about the Constitution, following the law set by the Constitution, and vote properly and clearly. And the person that wins, wins, and the person that loses, loses.
And always remember that we're a republic, not a democracy.
Correct.
It is not supposed to be mob rule. It is supposed to be proper procedure.
Correct.
Based on the Constitution.
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely true. We are a republic. We are not a democracy. And media newscasters and politicians keep throwing that around. We are not a democracy, and every time you hear that, you need to say, you're wrong, we are a republic. That does not mean Republican, we are republic, which means 51% does not dictate to you what's right or wrong. That's what it means. So on that note, Tuesday is coming up, and for the Republican primary nomination. So I encourage you, registered Republicans, to go vote, do your civic duty. And for everybody else, coming up, February, March, April, I think right through till June, I think we have various town elections and school elections. Do your homework. Make sure you're registered. Do your due diligence. Make sure you're paying attention. Volunteer. Help. Hold signs. Help people count. Eyes on the ballots. Make sure there's no, shenanigans going on. We need to have precise, legal, constitutional elections.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for coming and the patience to explain to everybody. I hope this has helped people. Don't be afraid to send us some notes and questions. We'd love to answer them. But more importantly, everybody, let's have a free and fair election that's constitutional. See you next week.